Receive what the universe wants to give you. Block 1. The opening. There is a particular kind of tiredness that does not come from not believing. It comes from believing, fully, and still not seeing the thing arrive. That is the tiredness you may be carrying right now. And if that is true, I want you to know that this is exactly where you are supposed to be. Not because struggle is noble, or because difficulty is a sign of growth, or because you needed to reach the end of your rope before something could shift. None of those things. Simply because the place you are standing right now is not a detour. It is the threshold. And thresholds, by their nature, are uncomfortable places to stand. They belong to no room. They are neither inside nor outside. They exist only in the transition between one state and another. And the person standing on a threshold can feel, sometimes quite acutely, that they are nowhere at all. You are not nowhere. You are here. And here is where this begins. I want to take a moment before anything else to acknowledge something, because I think it matters that it gets said. You are not a beginner. You did not arrive at this audio because you are new to the ideas it will explore. You have done the work. You have sat with the meditations. You have kept the journals. You have written the affirmations, sometimes with full faith, and sometimes with a quiet desperation that you hoped no one, not even yourself, would notice. You have made the vision boards. You have done the scripting. You have tried to feel the feelings of already having the thing you want. And sometimes you felt them genuinely, and sometimes you manufactured them, and you kept going either way. You have watched the teachers, read the books, listened to the audios. You have done, in short, everything that the tradition of this work has asked of you, and still, the thing has not arrived. Or it has arrived in fragments, in small pieces that felt like previews, like evidence that the mechanism is real, but somehow, specifically for you, it keeps stopping just short, just one step past where you can touch it, just slightly out of reach. Not devastated, because you are not someone who gives up easily, and you are not someone who catastrophizes, and you are not someone who has let this break you. Just tired, just quietly, persistently carrying the low weight of something that has not yet resolved into the thing it is supposed to become. That specific state is what this audio is made for. Not spiritual beginners. Not people who are just discovering that their thoughts have power, or that there is an intelligence in the universe that responds to something beyond the purely mechanical. You already know all of that. You have known it for long enough that it is no longer a revelation. It is a premise. It is the ground beneath your feet, even on the days when that ground feels unstable. What you are here for is something else. Something that most of the material in this tradition does not address directly, because most of the material in this tradition is trying to get people in the door. And you are already inside. You have been inside for a long time. What you need is not another technique. What you need is not another practice to add to the stack of practices you are already carrying. What you need is a shift in vantage point, because from where you are currently standing, you cannot see what is actually happening. And once you can see it, not just understand it intellectually, but actually see it, the whole landscape reorganizes. That is what this is moving toward. But before we go anywhere, I want to give you something that most audios in this space do not give you, which is an honest opening. So here is what this audio is not going to do. This audio is not going to tell you when. The timing of what is moving toward you, the specific arrival point of the thing you have been asking for, is not a mechanism that can be handed to you in an audio. It is not something I know, and it is not something this material can determine. The universe's timing is not a problem that gets solved by the right set of instructions. And you already know this. You have always known this. And any audio that promises to tell you otherwise should be held with appropriate skepticism, because it is making a promise that cannot be kept. What this audio can do, what it is going to do, is give you something that changes the quality of what happens between now and then. And that, I want to suggest to you, is actually the more important thing. Because the quality of how you inhabit this in-between space is not separate from what is moving toward you. It is not just the waiting room. It is, in ways that will become clear, part of the mechanism itself. So, you are here. You believe. You are tired but not broken. You are still in. You have not given up. Not really. Not even on the days when it looked like you had. Some thread of something has kept you returning, kept you listening, kept you trying. And that thread is not nothing. That thread is everything, actually. And I do not think it persisted by accident. You did not arrive at this audio by accident. I want to say that and mean it, not as a sales line, not as a way of flattering you into staying, but because within the worldview that this audio operates from entirely, the worldview that you share, that statement is simply true. The universe is not random. Attention is not random. What finds you, finds you. And something brought you here, to this particular moment, to these particular words, and whether that feels like coincidence or confirmation or just the logical result of a search you ran last Thursday, the fact of it is the same. You are here. Let that be enough for right now. Let the beginning be this. You are here. You believe. You are ready to see something you have not been able to see yet. And this is where that happens. Close your eyes if you want to, or let your gaze soften somewhere in the distance. Let the shoulders come down a little. Not because relaxing is the answer to anything. It is not. And we will talk about why the instruction to simply relax has probably not helped you as much as you hoped it would. But because the body deserves to not be braced right now, because you are not in danger, because the thing that has felt so urgent, so important to grasp and secure and make certain can afford to be set down for the length of this listening. It will still be there. Everything that matters will still be there. But for right now, let there be just this. Just the sound of these words. Just the weight of you, settling. Just the beginning. There is something I want to introduce to you slowly, because it does not do well when it arrives all at once. It is the kind of thing that needs to come in gradually, through the side door rather than the front. Because if it comes in the front door, you will recognize it too quickly. You will say, yes, I know that, and you will move on before it has had a chance to do what it needs to do. So I am going to introduce it slowly. I am going to circle around it. I am going to let you arrive at it by degrees, and by the time you are standing directly in front of it, I want it to feel less like information and more like recognition. The idea is this, and I will say it simply now, and we will spend a long time with it. The reach and the receive use different hands. That is it. That is the seed of everything this audio is about. You cannot receive water with a clenched fist. And the hand that reaches is not the same hand that receives. This is mentioned once here, simply, and for now, we will leave it. Do not try to do anything with it yet. Just let it sit somewhere near you, like something you picked up on the beach that you are not yet sure what to make of, that you put in your pocket and carry forward, that you will find again later when the time is right. For now, we go slowly. For now, we begin. There is a version of you that woke up this morning and felt the familiar texture of it. The thing that has not yet arrived. Maybe it is a relationship. Maybe it is a clarity about direction, a sense of what you are supposed to be doing, a feeling of alignment with purpose that other people seem to have and that you have touched in flashes but cannot seem to sustain. Maybe it is a shift in circumstances, financial circumstances, professional circumstances, circumstances around your health or your home or your sense of security in the world. Maybe it is something more interior than any of those things, a peace, a settledness, a sense of your own okayness that you keep reaching for and keep finding slightly outside your grasp. Whatever it is, you know it. You have known it for longer than you want to admit. and the knowing has started to accumulate its own weight. I want to spend some time with that weight, not to increase it, not to make it heavier. But because one of the things that tends to happen in this tradition is that we move very quickly past the discomfort toward the solution, and in doing so, we sometimes skip over the most important thing, which is the honest acknowledgement of what is actually here, what is actually being felt, not as a problem, not as evidence of failure, not as something to be transmuted or reframed before we have even allowed it to be seen. Just as what it is. You are carrying something. You have been carrying it for a while, and you have done everything you know how to do to put it down, and it is still there. That is real. That gets to be real. And we are going to start from there, because the solution, if there is one, the shift, the new way of seeing, can only be useful if it connects to the actual thing that is here, not to a version of your experience that has already been sanded down into something more presentable, not to the version of yourself that goes on the meditation app and has a lovely relationship with the universe and gratitude practices and all of that, to the version of you that is, underneath all of it, a little bit tired of reaching. That is the one this is for. And I want that version to know, before anything else, the reaching was not wrong. The effort was not a mistake. The practices were not a waste of time. You were doing what you understood to do, from the best place you knew how to do it from. And all of it, every bit of it, has brought you here. And here, it turns out, is exactly where the thing you have been looking for was always going to be found. Not in more effort, not in a better technique, not in a version of yourself that finally does the practice correctly. Here, in this particular moment of sitting down and listening and carrying the weight of it, and not yet knowing what is going to shift. The shift is already in motion. That is what I want you to know. Not as a comfort, not as a nice thing to say, but as something that will become self-evident by the end of this. The very fact of your arriving here is part of the motion. The tired is part of the motion. The not knowing is part of the motion. You are, whether it feels like it or not, in the right place at the right time. Let that be enough for right now. Let this be the beginning. Block 2. Establishing the stakes. What does it actually cost to keep reaching? Not in the big, dramatic sense. Not the cost of losing faith entirely, of turning away from the principles, of becoming someone who says, I tried that, and it did not work, and building walls around whatever used to believe. That is one kind of cost, and it is real, but it is not the cost I am talking about. The cost I am talking about is quieter than that, more interior, the kind of cost that does not announce itself and does not arrive all at once, but accumulates, slowly, in the spaces between the practices and the affirmations, and the moments of genuine connection, and all the rest of it. It is the cost of running a quiet background calculation nearly continuously that goes something like this. I have done the thing. I have done it again. I have felt the feeling, or tried to feel the feeling, or pretended to feel the feeling until something that resembled the feeling appeared. And the result has not materialized, which means either the principles are not real, or I am doing it wrong, or there is something specifically about me that is not working the way it is supposed to work. Most people in this tradition will not choose the first option. The principles are real. They have seen too much, felt too much, experienced too many small confirmations to dismiss the whole framework. So they are left with the second option and the third option, rotating between them, and neither one feels like solid ground to stand on. Am I doing it wrong? Or is the problem me? That rotation, that specific rotation between those two possibilities, is where the cost accumulates. Because neither question is answerable with the information available. You can always find something you could be doing differently. You can always find something about your mindset that is not quite right. Some residual doubt, some unexamined belief, some frequency you are broadcasting that contradicts the thing you are asking for. And because you can always find it, because there is always more inner work to do. The second option never fully resolves. And the third option, the possibility that the problem is simply you, that you are somehow constitutionally unable to receive in the way that other people receive, that sits like a stone at the bottom of the well, never fully named, never fully dismissed. This is what spiritual exhaustion actually looks like. Not the absence of belief, the quiet, persistent erosion of certainty about oneself. Not I do not believe in the principles, but I am not sure the principles believe in me. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this rather than answer it quickly. In the last week, in the last month, how many times have you caught yourself looking for the thing? Not visualizing it, not holding the intention for it, but scanning. Scanning circumstances, conversations, coincidences, for some evidence that it is coming. For some sign that the thing you have been asking for is, in fact, in motion. How many times have you felt a little surge of something, a possibility, a moment that seemed like it might be the beginning of the arrival, and then watched it not resolve into what you hoped, and felt the specific deflation of that? The scan is the cost. The scan, running quietly in the background while you go about your life, is the thing that is draining you. Not the practices, not the beliefs. The scan. And here is what is subtle about it. The scan feels like vigilance. It feels like staying open. It feels like what you are supposed to be doing if you actually believe that what you have asked for is on its way. It feels like readiness. But it is not readiness. It is something structurally different from readiness. And that structural difference is everything. The scan is a form of doubt, wearing the clothing of faith. It is not conscious. That is important to say. The person who is scanning is not doing so cynically. They are not secretly sure it is not coming and performing belief on the surface. They genuinely believe, and they are genuinely scanning. Both things are true at the same time. The conscious mind holds the faith. The deeper layer runs the scan, and the gap between those two things is where the exhaustion lives. There is a man, and I want you to hold this image for a moment. There is a man standing at the window of his home. He is expecting a visitor, someone important, someone he has been waiting a long time to see. And he genuinely believes the visitor is coming. There is no doubt in his conscious mind. But he has been standing at the window for a long time, and every car that turns onto his street and then keeps going, every figure in the distance that is not the person he is expecting, every passing minute that does not produce the knock at the door, adds incrementally to a low-level tension he does not name as doubt because he does not experience it as doubt. He experiences it as waiting, and waiting, to him, feels like the right thing to be doing. He is staying ready. He is not walking away from the window, not going to do something else, not settling into the ordinary rhythms of the afternoon, because to do so would feel like giving up, like not believing enough, like not being ready when the knock finally comes. What he does not know, because he cannot see it from where he is standing, is that his visitor has already turned onto the street. His visitor is, in fact, approaching, and the tension that the man's body is radiating, the tight quality of his attention, the specific flavor of his readiness is causing the visitor to pause outside, not to leave, just to pause, because something about the quality of the waiting at that window does not feel like welcome. It feels like pressure, and pressure, even well-intentioned pressure, even pressure that comes from love and longing and genuine belief, changes the nature of an arrival. What the man does not understand yet is that if he would simply move away from the window, make himself a cup of tea, let himself exist in the ordinary moment rather than straining toward the one that has not happened yet, the knock would come sooner. Not because he earned it through his relaxation, not as a reward for letting go, but because the quality of the space he would create by doing that is qualitatively different from the one he is creating by standing at the window. And what is coming is responding to the quality of the space. What is coming is always responding to the quality of the space. That image is something to carry with you, not as a prescription for behavior, not as another thing you should be doing, but as a way of seeing what is already happening. The man at the window is not a story about someone else. The man at the window, or the woman, or the person, is the inner state that most people operating in this tradition are living from, most of the time, without knowing it. The scan is the window. The tension is the window. The constant background monitoring for evidence of arrival is the window. And the window is not openness. The window is a very specific kind of barrier. Now, here is where I want to be careful, because there is a very common response to this kind of framing, and I want to address it before it takes root in the wrong direction. The response goes something like this. Okay, so I just need to stop waiting. I just need to let go and trust and not look for it, and then it will come. And the person goes off and tries to not look for it, and in trying to not look for it, they are still, in a different way, looking for it. They are looking for the absence of looking. They are monitoring for whether they have successfully stopped monitoring. They have taken the same internal posture and given it a different name. Letting go, as most people attempt it, is not the same as receiving. And this distinction matters enormously. We will spend a great deal of time with it. But for now, just hold the awareness that the answer is not simply the opposite of the problem. Releasing the grip is not just a matter of opening the hand. There is something more specific happening in the moment of true reception, and it is not captured by the instruction to try less hard. So what is the gap? What is the actual thing that is missing if it is not more technique and it is not less effort? Let me tell you what this is moving toward, specifically, because I think you deserve that clarity early. There is a way of being in relationship to what you have been asking for that is fundamentally different from any way you have likely been taught. It is not about the practices. It is not about whether you are doing them correctly. It is not about your vibration in the moment of asking, or the specificity of your intention, or how well you have cleared your limiting beliefs, or how consistently you are showing up for your visualizations. All of those things have their place. None of them are the whole story. The thing that is missing is something so simple that the mind tends to slide off it. The mind wants something more complex, more effortful, something that gives it a role to play. The mind does not trust simplicity because simplicity does not feel like it is doing enough. But the thing that is missing is this. You do not yet know, at the level that matters, what it feels like to be in the state of receiving rather than the state of asking. Those are not the same state. They are, in fact, structurally opposite. And most of what this tradition teaches is about how to ask more effectively, how to ask more clearly, more confidently, more consistently, with more feeling, with more specificity, with more gratitude, with more alignment between your conscious desires and your unconscious beliefs. It is all in the service of asking and asking. No matter how refined, no matter how sophisticated, no matter how spiritually evolved, is still asking. Receiving is something else entirely. And that is where we are going. But I want you to notice, before we move forward, what is happening in your body right now. Because I suspect that somewhere in the last few minutes, something shifted slightly. Not dramatically, but something. A small relaxation, perhaps, at the recognition that the problem might not be you, that the exhaustion might have an explanation that does not require you to conclude that you are broken or constitutionally incapable of receiving. There is something that happens when a person's actual experience gets named accurately, without flinching, without rushing to make it better. Something releases, the smallest amount. And that release is not nothing. That release is, in fact, the very first movement in the direction we are traveling. Let it happen. You do not have to do anything with it. Just notice that something is slightly different than it was at the beginning of this, and let that be the ground we are building from. We are going to talk, Next, about a door. About the specific nature of a door that opens inward, and what that means for the person standing on the outside of it. But before we get there, I want to give you one more frame for understanding what the cost of continued asking actually is, because I think it will make everything that follows land more precisely. Every time you have done a practice from the state of not yet having, every time you have tried to feel the feeling of already having, while also feeling the truth that you do not yet have, something interesting has happened. Not something bad, not something that means the practice did not work, or that you did not try hard enough, or that the principles failed. Something very specific. The frequency you transmitted in that moment was not the frequency of having. It was the frequency of trying to feel having. And those are not the same frequency. They are close. They rhyme. But they are not the same. And the field, the intelligence, the universe, whatever name you use for the responsive, something that you have organized your understanding around, that field does not respond to the approximation of a frequency. It responds to the frequency itself. This is not a judgment. It is simply a description of how the mechanism works. And once you understand it clearly, it explains a great deal about why the gap has persisted, even in the presence of genuine effort and genuine belief. You have been transmitting on one frequency, clearly and consistently and with great sincerity. And you have been listening for a response on a different frequency. And the gap between those two things, that exact gap, is what has made the arrival feel like it is coming from just outside your reach. Not because it is. Not because the universe is withholding. Not because you have done anything wrong. Because the instrument has been pointed in a slightly different direction than where the signal was being broadcast. That is going to change. That is what this is for. You cannot receive water with a clenched fist, and the hand that reaches is not the same hand that receives. Put that in your pocket. We will come back to it. Now, let us talk about a door. Block 3. The reach that blocks the door. There is a door in the architecture of this conversation, and I want to describe it to you carefully, because the way it works is counterintuitive in a way that matters. The door opens inward. That sounds simple, and it is simple, but the implications of it are not immediately obvious, and they are worth spending time with. Most of us, when we encounter a door, we want to open, push. It is the natural gesture. You see something on the other side of a door that you want, and you bring your energy toward it, and you push. The pushing is not stupidity or naivety. It is actually a very reasonable response to a door, except when the door opens inward, because a door that opens inward cannot be pushed open. It does not matter how much force you apply. It does not matter how sincerely you push. It does not matter how long you have been pushing, or how consistent you are in your pushing, or how much you believe in the existence of what is on the other side. The door opens inward. Pushing is the wrong gesture entirely. And here is the part that matters. The door was never locked. It was never barred. It was not resisting you. It was not testing you. It was not waiting until you earned the right to come through. The door was always available to open. The only thing preventing the opening was the fact that you were applying a gesture that is categorically incompatible with the way this particular door works. The stepping back is the whole practice, not the letting go, not exactly, not the giving up, certainly not that, the stepping back. Because when you step back from the door, two things happen simultaneously. The first is that the energy you were pouring into the pushing is released, and that release creates space. And the second, less obvious thing is that the door, no longer being held against its frame by the pressure of your effort, can now move, can now open in the direction it was always designed to open, into the space that is now available because you stepped back. The stepping back does not cause the door to open. The door was always going to open. What the stepping back does is stop preventing it. And that distinction is the entire thing. That is the whole engine of what we are talking about. Let me slow this down and approach it from a different angle, because I want it to land not just as a metaphor, but as a felt understanding. There is a concept in physics, and I am not a physicist, so I will keep this loose. But there is a concept in physics that has to do with the act of observation affecting the thing being observed. The very act of looking at something changes it. This is not just a philosophical point. It is an empirically demonstrable reality at the quantum level. The observer and the observed are not separate. They are in a relationship. And the nature of that relationship, the quality of the observation, changes what is observed. You do not need to understand quantum physics for this to be relevant to you. What you need to understand is this: the state you are in when you are reaching for something is a state that includes a specific quality of observation. It is the state of someone who does not yet have the thing, reaching toward it. And that state, that quality of observation, is part of what the field is responding to. You are not separate from what you are asking for. You are in a relationship with it. And the nature of that relationship, the quality of your observation, your reaching, your waiting, your scanning, is changing what you can receive. This is not a judgment. Let me say that again clearly. This is not a moral assessment of your practice or your character. It is a description of how the mechanism works, and it matters. Because once you understand it clearly, you understand why more effortful reaching was never going to be the answer, no matter how refined the technique or how sincere the intention. The universe does not respond to requests the way a vending machine responds to coins. Insert the right amount, press the right button, receive the product. That model, however appealing in its clarity, is not the model that describes what is actually happening. The universe responds to states, to the total broadcast of who you are being in a given moment. Not to what you say you want, not to what you write in your journal or hold in your visualization or declare in your affirmation, to who you actually are being, in the fullness of the present moment, underneath the practices and the intentions and the beliefs. And the state of wanting something, the actual lived state of wanting, carries within it as part of its very structure, as part of its definition, the implicit signal that the thing is not yet here. You cannot want what you already have. The wanting and the not having are not separate. They are the same thing wearing different clothes. And that signal, the signal of not having, is what the field is primarily receiving, regardless of what the conscious practice is broadcasting. This is the invisible paradox at the center of most manifestation practice. This is why someone can do everything correctly, by the book, with full faith and consistent effort and genuine emotion, and still find the thing arriving just out of reach. Not because the practice is wrong, not because the principles are false, but because the state from which the practice is being done is, at its deepest level, broadcasting a signal that contradicts the stated intention. The state of wanting something is the state of not having it, and the field responds to states. Now, I said a moment ago that this is not a judgment, and I want to stay with that for a moment, because I can feel the place in you that wants to make it one. The part that hears this and immediately goes to, so everything I have done was wrong, so I have been doing it incorrectly this whole time. So the failure to receive is my fault in a way I did not previously understand. That is not what this is saying. What this is saying is that you have been doing what you understood to do, from the state of understanding that was available to you, and that state of understanding had a ceiling built into it that you could not see from inside it. Not a failure of intelligence, not a failure of sincerity, not a failure of spiritual readiness, a ceiling in the framework itself. And the work of this conversation is to lift that ceiling, to give you access to a wider view from which the whole landscape looks different, from which what you were doing makes complete sense and also reveals something that was not visible before. That is not failure. That is learning. That is the natural movement of understanding expanding. Let me give you another way to think about this. You have heard the phrase, perhaps many times, that you attract what you are rather than what you want. This phrase is often used in this tradition, and it is true, but it is usually taught in a way that focuses on the content of what you are, your beliefs, your wounds, your patterns, your frequency as determined by your history and your emotional state. And there is validity in all of that. But there is a layer beneath the content of what you are, and that layer is the structure of the state you are in. And the structure of the state called wanting is, at its deepest level, a state of lack. Not because you are a person of lack, not because you are deficient in some fundamental way, but because wanting is grammatically, structurally, inescapably a relationship with absence. You want the relationship because the relationship is not here. You want the clarity because the clarity has not arrived. You want the shift because the shift has not happened. The want is constituted by the not having. They are the same thing, and you cannot want yourself into having any more than you can push open a door that opens inward. This is the uncomfortable implication. I said earlier that I would name it anyway, and I will. If this is true, then every vision board done from the state of not yet having reinforced the gap, every scripting practice done from the state of wanting, every affirmation spoken from the state of absence, every visualization held from the emotional root of lack, did not reduce the distance between you and the thing. It maintained it, not maliciously, not as a punishment, as a simple reflection of what was actually being transmitted. You probably do not want that to be true. Most people do not. The mind resists it because the mind has been working very hard and does not want to be told that the hard work was, in a certain sense, aimed in the wrong direction. I understand that resistance. I am not asking you to resolve it right now. I am asking you to let it sit with you, uncomfortably, because the discomfort is actually productive. The discomfort is the ceiling being reached, right now, in this moment. And reaching the ceiling is the first step toward finding the door through it. So what is the alternative? If wanting reinforces the gap, what is the state that closes it? If reaching keeps the door closed, what is the gesture that opens it? If every affirmation spoken from absence amplifies the absence, what is the soil that allows the thing to actually take root and grow? There is a state. It is real. It is accessible. You have touched it before, probably in the moments you least expected to, in moments that had nothing to do with your practices or your intentions or your spiritual work. You have touched it in the middle of a piece of music that undid you completely. In the first light of an early morning, before the day started asking things of you. In a moment of sudden, inexplicable peace that arrived without cause and dissolved before you could understand it. In the split second before you remembered what you were worried about. That state is not manufactured. It is not achieved. It is not the result of the right technique applied correctly over sufficient time. It is what is left when the reaching stops. Not the manufactured stopping of reaching, not the effortful letting go, but the genuine, natural coming to rest that happens when the whole apparatus of striving simply, for a moment, finds no purchase. That is the state we are moving toward, not by force, not by technique, but by understanding what is actually happening clearly enough that the reaching starts to loosen on its own. Because the reaching only persists as long as you believe that reaching is the right gesture for this particular door. Once you understand, genuinely understand, that this door opens inward, the natural response to that understanding is the stepping back, not as discipline, as simple recognition. You step back from a door that opens inward because you understand how it works, not because you are spiritually advanced enough, not because you have done sufficient inner work, because you understand the mechanism. And that understanding is available right now, in this moment, without any further preparation. Let me build on something, because I want to make this more concrete. There is a difference, and I want you to feel this rather than just think it. There is a difference between living from the future and living toward it. Most of what this tradition teaches about manifestation is about living toward the future. directing yourself in the direction of the desired outcome, setting intentions, holding visions, aligning your energy with the thing that is coming. All of that is directed toward a future state that does not yet exist in the present. And that orientation toward a future that is not yet here reinforces, at a structural level, the experience of the future as not yet here. Living from the future is something different. It is not directing yourself toward the outcome. It is inhabiting the space from which the outcome is a natural expression. It is the difference between reaching for who you will be when the thing arrives and being, right now, the version of yourself for whom the arrival is not a distant hope, but a natural next event in an already unfolding story. This sounds abstract. Let me make it concrete. Think of someone who is happy in love, not someone who is trying to attract a relationship, not someone who is doing the practices to call in a partner, but someone who is genuinely, naturally, day-to-day happy in love. What is the quality of that person's relationship to love? They are not scanning for evidence that love exists. They are not trying to feel the feeling of being loved. They are simply in love. It is the ground they are standing on. It is not a destination they are moving toward. It is the present reality they inhabit. Now notice, that quality of inhabiting love, that groundedness in the reality of love as a present experience, is the very thing that makes love self-sustaining. Not as a trick, not as a technique, but as a natural consequence of the state. The person who is grounded in love radiates something that is recognizable to other people who are also grounded in love, or who could be. They are not broadcasting the signal of wanting love. They are broadcasting the signal of love itself. And what they receive, in response, is more of what they are broadcasting. Now take that exact same structure and apply it to whatever it is you have been reaching for. The question is not, how do I attract this thing? The question is, what is the quality of the state that, for someone who has this thing, is simply the ground they are standing on? And how do I stop reaching toward that state and start inhabiting it? That is not a rhetorical question. We are going to answer it. But for now, I want you to sit with the distinction, because it is the pivot point. It is the place where everything turns. The reach is not wrong. The reach was never wrong. The reach was the right response to a door that opened outward. But this door opens inward. And now that you know that, the natural next question is, what does it mean, in practice, in the actual lived moment of your daily life, to step back? That is what comes next. Block 4. What relaxing does not explain. If resistance were the whole picture, this would be simple. If the only problem were that you were trying too hard, the solution would be easy to describe. Stop trying so hard. Let go. Relax. Trust. Let the universe handle it. These are real instructions. They come from real understanding. And they have not worked for you, not fully, not consistently. And I want to honor that fact rather than paper over it. Because the fact that simply relaxing has not been sufficient is important information. It is pointing to something real. It is telling you that the picture is bigger than resistance. You have tried letting go. You have tried trusting. You have had periods, maybe, of genuine surrender, where you genuinely put the thing down, where you genuinely stopped monitoring for its arrival, where you stepped away from the window and went and made the tea and let the afternoon be an afternoon rather than a waiting room. And in those periods, sometimes something shifted slightly. Maybe a small confirmation came. Maybe you felt a moment of peace that seemed different from the ordinary kind. Maybe something in the vicinity of what you were asking for moved an inch. But it did not fully arrive. And eventually the monitoring returned, and the reaching returned, and you were back at the window. Not by conscious choice, but because the wanting had not actually resolved. And wanting, left unresolved, eventually finds its way back to the window. So the relaxing is real. The letting go is real. But it is not the whole answer. And the people who tell you it is, The tradition that says simply stop efforting and things will come are telling you a truth that is incomplete in a way that matters. What they are missing is this: the capacity to receive is not the same as the absence of effort. The capacity to receive is a positive quality. It is something real. It has a texture. It has a temperature. It has a specific nature that is different from every other state, including the state of relaxing. And simply stopping the reaching does not automatically create it, any more than stopping speaking automatically creates the condition of listening. Stopping speaking is necessary for listening. It is not sufficient. Listening requires something of its own, a quality of attention, an orientation, a particular kind of opening that is active even in its stillness. Receiving is like that. Let me try to approach this from another direction, because I think the precision of the distinction matters here, and I do not want to leave it as an abstraction. You know what it feels like to be in your body and suddenly hear a piece of music, a piece that you love, a piece that has meaning, a piece that finds the exact room in you that it was made for. You know the quality of what happens in that moment. Something opens. Something that was held, maybe without knowing it was held, releases. The breath changes. The chest changes. Something behind the eyes changes. There is a quality of reception in that moment that is palpable. You are not trying to receive the music. You are not efforting toward it. But you are also not simply relaxed. You are present in a way that is its own kind of alertness. A soft alertness. An open attention. The music and you are, in that moment, in genuine contact. Not because you reached for it, not because you relaxed toward it, because something in you opened, genuinely opened, in the direction of something that was genuinely there. That is receiving. That exact quality, not the music specifically, but that quality of contact, of genuine openness meeting genuine presence, of you and the thing being an actual relationship, rather than you reaching toward a future version of the thing that does not yet exist in the present. And I want to ask you, how often, in your practices, in your visualizations, in your scripting and your journaling and your affirmations, are you inhabiting that quality? The quality of genuine contact with the thing, as if it is here, as if you are in relationship with it, as if the space between you and it is not a gap but a live wire? Not very often, most likely. And that is not a criticism. It is just the truth about where most spiritual practice, done in the way it is typically taught, actually lands. Most practice is done in the relationship of the self to the desired future. And that relationship, however sincere, however well executed, is the relationship of two things that are not yet together. It is the relationship of reaching and not yet having. And the field responds to that relationship. The field confirms that relationship. The field reflects back the nature of the relationship, which is, these two things are not yet in contact. What changes the field is not a different technique applied within the same relationship. What changes the field is a different relationship, and the relationship that allows things to arrive is the relationship of the receiver to the received. Not the asker to the desired, the receiver to the received. And here is what is important. That relationship is not manufactured. It is not performed. It cannot be approximated. The field, whatever the field is, whatever intelligence is at work in the responsive, something that you have been in conversation with, it does not confuse the signal of trying to feel having with the signal of having. Those are different signals. They may look identical from the outside. From the inside, the field knows the difference because the field is not outside. The field is not observing you from a distance and granting requests based on the surface quality of your transmission. The field is, in some sense, that is difficult to language, more intimate than that, more interior. It is responding not to what you are broadcasting consciously, but to what is actually here, in the fullness of what is present. And so the question becomes, not how do I perform the state of receiving more convincingly, But how do I actually arrive in it? That is the real question. And the answer is not a technique. The answer is an understanding so clear, so genuinely integrated, that the state arises naturally as a consequence of the understanding. That is how it always works. We do not produce states by willing them. We produce states by coming to see clearly. The state follows the vision. Let me come back now to something I mentioned much earlier: the clenched fist. The hand that reaches is not the same hand that receives. You cannot receive water with a clenched fist. I want to look at this more carefully now, because I think you are ready to receive it in a way you were not, perhaps, when it first appeared. The clenched fist is not malicious. The clenched fist is not a moral failure. The clenched fist is the natural state of a hand that has been reaching for a long time. When you reach towards something, the hand tends to close. It is preparing to grasp. It is readying itself for the act of taking hold. The closing is anticipatory. The closing is what the reaching hand does in preparation for contact. And so the reaching, over time, produces the clenching. They go together. They are part of the same gesture. And the clenching is what prevents the receiving. Not the reaching alone, but the clenched quality that the reaching produces in the hand. Because water does not flow into a clenched fist. It does not matter how much water is present. It does not matter how willing the water is to arrive. The fist cannot receive it. The open hand is not a relaxed hand. Exactly. The open hand is a hand that has released the reaching gesture while still being present. It is not a limp hand. It is not a hand that has given up and dropped to the side. It is a hand that is open, available, present, in contact with the air around it in a way that makes reception possible. The open hand is a specific and active state. It is just not the state of reaching. You have been reaching. You have been reaching with everything you have, with genuine intent and genuine faith and genuine desire, and the reaching has kept the hand closed, and the closed hand cannot receive. Not because the universe is withholding, not because you are unworthy, not because the principles do not apply to you, because the gesture of reaching, sustained over time, closes the hand. That is just what reaching does. What opens the hand is not trying to open it, not forcing the fingers apart while the reaching impulse is still driving them closed. What opens the hand is understanding, at the level of the body, not just the mind, that the reaching is not required, that what is coming does not need to be grasped to arrive, that the arrival will happen and has been happening, and the only question has ever been whether the hand was open to receive it when it came. There is a stillness on the other side of all this effort. I want to be very specific about what I mean by stillness, because it is not the absence of life. It is not the flatness of nothing. It is more like the stillness of deep water, which is not empty but full, which is not still in the sense of stopped, but still in the sense of not agitated. Deep water is not nothing. Deep water is dense with life, with movement, with presence. It is just not turbulent. The turbulence is the surface, and the surface is where the reaching happens. The stillness is underneath. And what actually receives, is not the surface. Now, you have perhaps noticed, and I want to name this before we continue, that this conversation has not told you to do anything yet. There has been no instruction, no practice, no specific protocol to add to your stack. And you may be feeling, somewhere underneath the listening, a restlessness about that. A sense that understanding is not enough, that understanding without a practice is just more thinking, that what you need is something to do. I understand that feeling. And I want to say something to it directly. The restlessness you feel about having nothing to do is part of the mechanism we have been discussing. The desire for a practice, for a technique, for something to apply, is another form of reaching. It is the hand trying to close around an instruction it can grasp. And I am not going to give it one right now. Not because practice is irrelevant, not because doing has no place in this, but because you need to understand, before you do anything, what you are doing it from. Because doing the right thing from the wrong state produces the same result you have been getting. The state is what matters. The state is what everything else depends on. And the state is what we are here to understand. So for now, stay with the understanding. Let it sit in you and work on you and soften the places that have been held. You do not need to do anything with it yet. You do not need to integrate it correctly or apply it properly or make sure you are understanding it in the right way. Just let it be here, in you, doing what understanding does when it is allowed to arrive, rather than being grasped. There is a breath underneath all of this. Find it, not as a practice, not as a technique. Just find the breath that is already happening, the one that does not need to be managed or directed or made deeper. The one that has been doing its work quietly this whole time, while you have been occupied with everything else. Find that breath. It has been receiving this whole time, without effort, without technique, without the right state of mind, or the correct emotional frequency, or the proper level of alignment. It has just been receiving. The body already knows how to do this. Every inhale is an act of complete reception. No effort, no deserving, no asking twice. The breath does not negotiate. It simply opens. And then it lets go. And then it opens again. Open, release, open, release. The whole mechanism being discussed is already present in you, running, practiced, thousands of times each day, without any intervention from the mind. The breath is not a metaphor. The breath is the body demonstrating, in the most immediate and available way possible, what it looks like to receive completely. And the question, the only question, is whether that quality of reception can be extended beyond the lungs. Whether the same effortless opening that happens in the chest with every inhale can happen in the larger body of who you are in relationship to what the universe is offering. And I want to suggest to you that it can. Not because you need to work at it, but because you are already doing it, in miniature, with every breath. The capacity is not missing. The capacity is here. It is functioning. It is available. The only question is the scale. We are going to expand the scale. Block 5. Receiving is a state, not an action. Everything we have covered so far has been moving toward the same center, and I want to name that center directly now because you are ready to hear it. The question was never, how do I get the universe to give more? The universe has been giving continuously. This is not a poetic statement. This is not a comfort offered to make you feel better about the gap. It is a description of the nature of reality, as experienced from within the framework we are both operating from. The field is not intermittent. The broadcast does not go off the air. The offering does not pause while you get your state together. It is continuous. It is constant. It has never stopped. The question, the only real question, the question that everything in this conversation has been pointing toward is, how do I become someone who can receive what is already being offered? Not how do I attract it, not how do I ask for it correctly, not how do I align with it or earn it or manifest it or call it in. How do I become someone who can receive what is already, continuously, fully, here? That reframe is everything. Let me say it again, because I want it to land not just as an idea, but as a felt shift in the architecture of how you have been thinking about this. The universe is not a supplier waiting for your order. It is a river. It has always been a river. It is flowing right now, past you, toward you, through the landscape of your life. And what the question of manifestation is actually asking, stripped of the apparatus that has been built around it, is not how do I get the river to flow in my direction. The river is already flowing in your direction. The river does not have a direction that is not toward what is open. The question is, what kind of riverbank am I being? The bucket at the river. You know the image. You have heard variations of it in different forms. You bring a bucket to the river, you fill it, you carry it away. There is nothing wrong with this. But the bucket limits what can enter. The bucket can only receive as much as its size allows. The bucket is a defined container, and the definition of the container is the limit of what can be received. The riverbank is different. The riverbank does not choose what to receive. The riverbank does not bring a container to the water. The riverbank simply is the shape that the river flows against. It does not effort toward the water. It does not deserve it. It does not deserve it. It does not have to maintain the right frequency to get the river to come. The river simply flows toward what is open. And the riverbank, by the nature of being a riverbank, is open. Not by effort, by nature. You are not a bucket. You have been being a bucket. Not because you chose to be a bucket. Not because bucket was the right option and you selected it from the menu. But because the tradition handed you a bucket and said, go get some water. And you went. And you went faithfully. And you went repeatedly. And you went with genuine belief in the water's existence. And the bucket helped you bring back some of what was there. But the bucket is not the limit of what is available. The riverbank is available. The riverbank is what you actually are, underneath the bucket, underneath the reaching, underneath all the years of going to get. You are the shape that the river of life wants to move against. You are the natural recipient of what the universe is offering. Not because you earned it, not because you are special in a way that others are not, but because receiving is your nature. Just as it is the nature of the riverbank, just as it is the nature of the open hand, just as it is the nature of the inhale. And the reason it has not felt like your nature, the reason it has felt like something you have to work toward and earn and practice your way into, is because somewhere along the line, you picked up the bucket. And the bucket started to feel like you. And the reaching started to feel like the practice. And the practice started to feel like the relationship between you and the universe. And none of it was you. None of it was the relationship. It was just the bucket. And you can put the bucket down. You can just put it down. Not as a technique, not as something to practice. As a recognition. The bucket is not you. The reaching is not you. The exhausting, persistent, sincere, faithful reaching toward the thing that has been staying just out of reach is not the expression of your deepest nature. It is the habit of a person who was handed a bucket and never told that they could set it down. This is the central understanding. This is what we have been building toward, and I want to give it space now to open in you, because it is the kind of understanding that needs room. It is not something to be grasped, which would be ironic. It is something to be received. Let it arrive in you the way music arrives. Not because you worked for it, because you are open to it. And now the personal landing. Because this is not abstract. For whatever you have been reaching for, whatever specific thing or quality or state has been sitting on the other side of the gap, I want to ask you a genuine question. Not a rhetorical one. A question worth spending real time with. In what specific ways are you still standing in your own doorway? Not as self-blame. I want to be very clear about that. This is not another way of saying the problem is you. The failure is yours. You need to fix yourself before you can have what you want. That is not what I am asking. I am asking as a genuine inquiry into the texture of your current state. Where, specifically, is the hand still closed? Where, specifically, are you still at the window? Where, specifically, are you still going to the river with the bucket instead of simply being the riverbank? Maybe it is in the way you think about money. Not the affirmations you say about money, but the way you actually feel when you look at your bank account. Is there a tightening? A scan for evidence that there is not enough? A quality of checking, of monitoring, that has the texture of not yet having, even when you are doing your best to practice abundance? Maybe it is in the way you relate to your body, not what you intend for it or hope for it or set intentions around, but the actual quality of your moment-to-moment relationship with it. Is there a baseline dissatisfaction, a gap between what is here and what you are working toward, that hums quietly underneath everything else? Maybe it is in the relationship with another person, or with the idea of a relationship if the relationship itself has not yet arrived. What is the quality of your feeling into that space? Is it an open readiness, a genuine availability, a sense of genuine sufficiency in the present that makes the arrival of another person a beautiful addition rather than a rescue? Or is there a longing, a scan, a quality of reaching that has become so familiar it feels like openness, but is actually the window? I am not asking you to have the answer right now. I am asking you to hold the question with genuine honesty, because the honest holding of the question is itself the beginning of the shift. You cannot step back from the door until you know you are pressing against it. The awareness of the pressing is the first movement of the stepping back. What you are reaching for is reaching for you. That is the other half of the equation that this tradition rarely tells you. You are not the only one with intention in this relationship. The thing you have been asking for, the life you have been imagining, the version of yourself that is already living in the fullness of what you want, that version, that life, that thing, it has a kind of gravity too. It is not passive. It is not simply waiting for you to call it in. It is leaning in your direction. It has been leaning in your direction. The universe has been inclining the whole weight of whatever it is toward you, not as a reward for your effort, not as a response to your technique, but because that is the nature of what wants to happen. Some things simply want to happen, and what you have been asking for is one of them. The gap is not between you and the thing. The gap has been between who you have been being and the spaciousness that would allow the thing to land. Not a moral gap, not a worthiness gap, a frequency gap, a capacity gap. And the capacity to receive, as we have been exploring, is not a matter of trying differently or harder. It is a matter of understanding clearly enough that the trying simply stops. Not by effort, by vision. When you can see the door opens inward, the pushing stops naturally. When you understand that the river flows toward the open bank, the reaching for the bucket becomes simply unnecessary. When you recognize, in your body, in the living tissue of your actual experience, that you are not separate from what you have been seeking, that the separation has been the structure of the seeking itself, the seeking can rest. And in that rest, something that has been held can move. There is a version of you, not far from here, not in some distant imagined future, but close, genuinely close, who has stopped auditing the gap, who has stopped measuring the distance between where they are and where they want to be. Not because they gave up on wanting to be there, not because they decided the journey did not matter, but because they arrived, finally, in the understanding that the audit itself was keeping the gap open, that the constant measurement of the distance was, in a subtle but real way, what was maintaining the distance. And when that version of you stopped auditing and simply began to inhabit the present with the quality of someone who is genuinely, fundamentally available to receive what is already coming, something changed. Something that had been held in suspension began to move. Not explosively, not with fanfare, just began to move. That version of you is not far away. That version of you is the natural result of what you are coming to understand right now, in this listening, in this moment of the morning or the evening or wherever and whenever you are. That version of you is what this conversation is making available. Not by giving you a technique, by giving you a clear sight of something that has been true all along, that you could not see before because you were too close to it, too inside the reaching to see the reaching for what it was. You are beginning to see it now. Let that be enough for this moment. Let this be the center from which everything that follows expands. Block 6. Surrender versus absence. The word surrender has been doing a lot of damage in this tradition. Not because the word is wrong, but because the word has been so consistently misunderstood, applied so systematically in the wrong direction, used so reliably as a synonym for something it is not, that when most people hear surrender, what they actually hear is stop, give up, be passive, empty yourself out, stop wanting, stop caring, become small and quiet and still in the way that things are still when they are done, when they have given in, when they have accepted defeat and found a kind of peace in the acceptance. That is not surrender. That is exhaustion with a spiritual vocabulary put over it. Real surrender is one of the most active states available to a human being. I want to say that again, because I know it contradicts almost everything you have been told. Real surrender is active. Real surrender is not the absence of energy. It is the radical redirection of energy, from grasping at outcomes to inhabiting the present, from monitoring the gap to living fully in what is already here, from the window to the room. That redirection is not small. It is not passive. It requires something from you that is, in its own way, more demanding than anything the reaching asked of you, because the reaching at least gave you the feeling of doing something. The surrender asks you to trust without the doing, and trusting without the doing, real trusting, not the performance of trust, but the actual inhabitation of it, is one of the most demanding things a human being can be asked to produce. The person who has genuinely surrendered is not waiting. That is the thing. The person who has genuinely surrendered is fully alive in the present moment, in a way that makes them magnetically available to what wants to come. Not because they manufactured that aliveness, not because they practiced their way into it, but because the energy that was being used to grasp and scan and monitor and reach, all that energy, when it is released from those purposes, has to go somewhere. And where it goes, when it is genuinely released, is here, into the present, into the body, into the texture of what is actually happening right now, in this moment, in this life that is already and has always been underway. The surrendered person is not someone who has stopped caring about what they want. They have not deadened themselves to desire. Desire is alive in them, but it has changed in quality. It has moved from a desperate reaching, from a wanting that carries within it the structure of lack, to something more like a quiet knowing, a settled sense of what is true, a relationship with what is coming that does not depend on monitoring its arrival to verify that it is still in motion. That quality, that settled knowing without the monitoring, is the state of surrender. And it is not achieved. It arises. It arises as a natural consequence of understanding what is actually happening clearly enough that the grasping simply loses its grip. Let me come down now from the principle level, because I think there is a risk of this becoming too abstract, and the abstract does not feed the body. Think about your breath again, not as a symbol, as the actual physical thing that is happening in your body right now. Every inhale is an act of complete surrender to what is available. You do not plan the inhale. You do not decide how much air to take. You do not evaluate whether you deserve the air, whether you have done sufficient work to earn the next breath, whether your frequency is aligned correctly with the frequency of oxygen. You simply open, and the air comes, and then you release, and then you open again. The body has been doing this without your interference your entire life. It does not need your management. It does not need your technique. It does not need you to believe in breathing or to maintain a consistent practice of inhaling. It simply breathes, continuously, effortlessly, completely. Every single inhale, a perfect act of reception. Every single exhale, a perfect act of release. Open, release, open, release. The entire mechanism of give and take, of receiving and releasing, happening continuously, automatically, without any of the apparatus you have constructed around the larger act of receiving in your life. The body already knows how to do this. You already know how to do this. You have been doing it without stopping since the moment you arrived here. And I want you to notice something about the inhale. The inhale does not strain. You do not experience the inhale as effortful. You do not notice the inhale laboring toward the air, reaching for the oxygen, scanning to make sure the air is on its way. The inhale simply opens, and what is there, what is always there, comes in. No negotiation, no deserving, no alignment required. That is the model. Not as a technique you apply, as a recognition of what is already happening, continuously, in the most fundamental process of your physical existence. The model for receiving is already running in your body. The template is already there. The muscle memory, so to speak, already exists. The only question is whether the same quality of natural, effortless, unearned, unconditional openness can extend beyond the act of breathing and into the larger experience of being alive. And I believe it can. I believe, because I have seen it, because this is the natural consequence of genuinely understanding what we have been exploring. That when a person truly sees the mechanism clearly, when the picture comes into focus in the way a blurred image resolves when you adjust the lens, the expansion happens organically. Not all at once, not with a trumpet and a revelation, but organically, the way a flower opens, which is not something the flower effortful toward, which is simply the natural consequence of the conditions being right. You are becoming the right conditions. Now I want to address something that may have been living in the background of this entire conversation, and that needs to be brought into the light before we move toward the close. What looked like the universe ignoring you was never that. I want to say this as clearly as I can, because I know it has been one of the quiet wounds of this experience. The gap, the persistent gap between what you have been asking for and what has arrived, has at times felt like evidence. Evidence that something is wrong, or that something about the principles is not working for you specifically, or that the universe has some kind of blind spot where you are standing. The gap has felt, at its most painful, like abandonment, like sending a letter that never gets answered, like a relationship in which one party is giving everything and the other party is not responding. That was not the correct reading. And I do not say that to dismiss the feeling. The feeling was real. The feeling of unrequited effort, of genuine, sincere work that does not seem to produce the result, is real, and it is painful, and it is allowed to have been painful. The feeling does not need to be corrected. The reading does. What was actually happening, what has been happening all this time, while it looked like silence and absence and withholding, is simpler and stranger than any of that. You were transmitting on one frequency and listening for a response on another. Not because you were defective, not because you made a mistake, because the framework you were given focused all its attention on the transmission and gave relatively little to the quality of the receiving. And so you learned to transmit, to ask, to visualize, to affirm, to intend with great skill and great sincerity. And you did all of that beautifully. And the transmission was real. And the asking was real, and the universe received all of it, and responded to all of it, and is responding to it right now. The gap was not between you and what you wanted. The gap was between who you were being and who could hold it. Not who you are as a person, not your character or your worth or your fundamental nature. The state you were in. The frequency of the receiver rather than the content of the request. And now that you are beginning to understand the receiver, beginning to see the receiver clearly, beginning to understand what it means to be the open hand rather than the reaching fist, the riverbank rather than the bucket, the person in the room rather than at the window, the gap is closing. Not as a result of effort, as a result of vision, as the natural consequence of seeing clearly something that was previously obscured. This is the reframe of everything. Not a reframe that requires work, a refrain that is the work. The seeing is the doing. The understanding is the change. Let me offer you something now that you can carry into the ordinary moments of the coming days. Not a practice, exactly. More like a quality of attention that, once you know it is available, you can return to. In any moment, in any ordinary, unremarkable moment of your daily life, you can ask yourself a simple question. Not the question of whether the thing is coming. Not the question of what you need to do to make it come. A different question. A much smaller question. A question that takes about 3 seconds and requires nothing extraordinary. The question is, right now, am I open? Not in the cosmic sense. In the immediate, physical, available sense. Right now, in this body, in this moment, is there openness? Is the hand open or closed? Is the breath full or held? Is there a quality of reception available, even if it is small, even if it is just a crack, even if it is just the willingness to not be clenched right now? Because a crack is enough. The river does not need a wide open space to begin to move through. It needs an opening. It needs the beginning of an opening. It needs the first relaxation of the grip that has been holding the door closed against itself. You cannot receive water with a clenched fist. And you now know what a clenched fist feels like from the inside. You now have the ability to notice it when it happens. And the noticing, the genuine noticing without self-judgment, without the additional layer of I, am noticing that I am clenched, and this is bad, and what does it mean, and why can I not just stay open? The noticing without the commentary, just the simple recognition of the state, is the beginning of the unclenching. You do not have to open the hand by force. Just notice the closing. Just feel the fist. And let the awareness of the fist be enough. Because awareness, genuine awareness, is already the beginning of the opening. The hand that is aware of its own clenching is, in that awareness, already slightly less clenched. That is how it works. Not by effort, by light, by the simple introduction of attention to a place that was previously operating in the dark. This is the practice, if you want one. This is what doing something looks like in the context of everything we have explored. It is not adding another layer to the stack. It is simply bringing the light of awareness to what is already happening, so that what is already happening can respond to being seen. You are capable of this. You have always been capable of this. The capacity is not something to be developed. It is already here. It has always been here. The breath is already proving that, right now, without any effort on your part. What you are receiving in this moment is simply the understanding that allows the capacity to expand, from the lungs to the chest, from the chest to the life, from the life to the relationship between you and everything that has been, is, and will be moving toward you. The movement has never stopped. You are becoming able to receive it. Block 7. The close. Something has shifted. I am not going to name it too directly, because naming it directly might close it a little, might give the mind something to grip and analyze and measure and assess. So I will simply say, something has shifted. You know it. Maybe it is small. Maybe it is just the slightest relaxation of something that has been held for a long time, the almost imperceptible release of a tension so familiar it had begun to feel like your natural resting state. That is enough. That is, in fact, everything. Because the smallest movement in the direction of openness is the beginning of all the rest. A single crack in a frozen river is not nothing. It is the beginning of the thaw. You know something now that you did not know when you pressed play. Not information, exactly. Not a set of ideas you can bullet point and take away and apply to the problem. Something more interior than that. A slightly different relationship to what you have been carrying. The weight is still the weight. The thing you have been asking for has not arrived between the beginning of this audio and the end of it. I am not going to pretend otherwise, because you would know if I did, and the knowing would undo everything. But the relationship to the weight has changed. Just slightly. Just enough. The weight is the same, and you are slightly different in how you are holding it. And that difference, though small, is everything that matters. I want to speak to you now about tomorrow. Not about the future in the grand sense. Not about when or how or what the arrival will look like. About tomorrow specifically. About the quality of the next ordinary day that is going to arrive. As days do, without asking your permission and without consulting your spiritual readiness. Tomorrow, something will happen. Something small, in all likelihood. A conversation will go a certain way. A door will be open or closed. A moment will present itself with a quality that, in another context, on another day, you might have reached for, lunged toward, gripped with the clenched fist energy of someone who has been waiting for exactly this and is not going to let it pass by. And I want to offer you this. What if you did not lunge? Not as a technique, not as a test, not as a practice you are now going to execute correctly because you have done this work. Just, what if you did not? What if, in that moment, you simply noticed the impulse to lunge, and you let the noticing be enough, and you let the thing come to you in the way a cat will come to you if you stop calling it and simply make yourself available. Simply become the kind of still, unhurried, genuinely present space that a cat or a moment or an arrival can approach? What if you let it come? Not because you have earned the right to receive it. Not because you have done the work. Not because you are finally aligned and ready and worthy. Because the reaching was never what was needed. Because the door opens inward. Because the river flows toward the open bank. Because the open hand receives what the clenched fist could not. And in that moment, if you let it come, if you simply stand in the day as the person you already are, already whole, already sufficient, already in relationship with what is moving toward you, you might notice something you have not noticed before. You might notice that things come when you are not reaching, that they arrive quietly, from the side rather than the front, in the moments when you are not looking for them so much as simply being here. They arrive in the gaps between the trying. They arrive when the scan is not running. They arrive in the quality of a Tuesday afternoon when nothing special is supposed to be happening, and yet something does. Something small. Something that would be easy to overlook if you were at the window. But that is visible, is felt, is received in the room. That is what tomorrow offers. Not the arrival of everything, just the beginning of the evidence, gathered not by looking for it, but by being the kind of person who can receive it when it comes. And the day after that, and the day after that, the evidence will accumulate. Not dramatically, quietly, in the way that things that are real tend to accumulate, which is less like an explosion and more like a tide, which is continuous and unhurried and does not require your monitoring to keep moving. You do not need to manage this. You do not need to track it or journal about it or make sure you are noticing correctly. The only thing required of you now is the willingness to inhabit your days from the place of openness you have been touching in this listening. Not perfectly, not continuously, not without the inevitable moments of returning to the window, returning to the reaching, returning to the scan. Those moments will come. They are not failures. They are not evidence that nothing has changed. They are simply the habit reasserting itself, and the habit is allowed to reassert itself. And when it does, the same awareness that unclenches the fist is available. The noticing. The light. The simple recognition without the additional layer of commentary. I said at the beginning that this audio would not tell you when. I want to return to that now, at the end, and say something slightly different. Not different in content, but different in tone. I do not know when. And that remains true. The timing is genuinely not mine to give you, and I would not trade in false certainty even if it were. But I want to say this. The quality of the waiting has changed, and the quality of the waiting is not separate from the timing. That is the thing I want you to carry. The quality of the space you inhabit between now and the arrival is not neutral time being waded through. It is the field itself. It is the state of the receiver. And the state of the receiver, as we have spent all of this time establishing, is what determines not just what you are available to receive, but when the receiving can happen. The open hand receives the water when the water comes. The clenched fist never receives it. And the open hand, by its very nature, by the quality of its openness, does not make the water wait longer than necessary. You are becoming the open hand. You may already be further along in that becoming than you think. There is a morning coming. I do not know which morning. But there is a morning coming when you will wake up and the thing, or something in the unmistakable direction of the thing, will be present. And you will not know, in that morning, whether it arrived because of the meditation you did 3 weeks ago, or the conversation you had with someone that cracked something open, or this audio, or something you did not even register as meaningful at the time. It will not be traceable to a single cause. It never is. The arrivals are not rewards for specific actions. They are the natural consequence of a field that has been gradually opened. And the opening has been happening, is happening, will continue to happen, because you are the kind of person who keeps moving in the direction of understanding, who keeps coming back, who, even in the exhaustion, even in the tiredness of the persistent reaching, kept the thread of belief alive. That thread was never nothing. It was always everything. And what was always meant for you never needed to be chased.